excited about it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I'm getting ready to sign on to ooh.
Linda, you can begin.
Okay. Welcome, sorors and friends, to the Trenton Alumni Chapters, Delta Sigma Theta, our virtual speaker series on mental health, holiday stress, grief, and COVID. We have a few technical ground rules that we would like you to adhere to, please. If you would keep yourself muted until we have a question and answer period, that would be very helpful. And also, we will have an evaluation at the end of the session that we hope you will complete, which will help us with future planning of events. So tonight we're excited because we want to share with you some valuable information that will be very helpful to you or to someone else during this tumultuous time of the pandemic, which has changed all of our lives forever. We've been in this for almost 2 years, and a lot of our lives have changed, and a lot of stress has come to all of us in many different ways. So tonight, we have two very exciting speakers who I'm going to let introduce themselves in a few minutes, but they're going to provide some information to you that hopefully will be helpful to all of you during this stressful time. And because it's the holiday season, which brings a lot of stress and memories and just upsetting times because we may or may not have our loved ones with us. So tonight, our goal is to hopefully have you get some answers to a few questions. And some of those questions are, what's the hardest thing to face in the loss of your loved one? What kind of support system do you have, or did your support system look like during this time? And what coping skills did you have to use to keep your mental health intact? So I'm going to start by introducing our speakers. The first one is Dr. Mirella Holmes, and I'll let her introduce herself. And then we have Monifa Harrison, who is going to introduce herself as well. So Mirella, you are muted.
Okay, here we go. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this webinar. The topic that we're discussing tonight is very near and dear to my heart, particularly grief, stress, and how we, people as ancestors or descendants of people of the African diaspora, how we experience grief, the strategies we use to lean into our grief, and how do we cope in this new time. We've never ever been in a global pandemic before. We've never ever had to live with some of the loss that we've experienced over the last 19 months. So I'm looking forward to sharing my experience with you. I am a licensed social worker. I've been a licensed social worker now for over 25 years. I'm also an ordained Baptist minister, which I've been ordained for over 25 years. So when I say that grief is near to my heart is true, I'm also a certified licensed grief counselor. So tonight I just hope to share with you some things that help you get through this holiday season, but also some other strategies, because this is, of course, a conversation that we don't have a lot in our community, but I hope that we can start having it more and that we can learn from here. And I just want to pass the mic over to Monifa Harrison, who I've asked her, Monifa, I do, full disclosure, I do facilitate a youth ministry group at my church, which is, it's Grief Share. It is a 13-week grief support group. And I say support group because I do not want us to get it confused with actual grief counseling. We can talk about that more on the question Q&A after our presentation, but this is a support group. because as you will learn through our conversation tonight, you're going to need that support group. Someone that you know will understand, who can listen, and that you can draw strength from as well. So Monifa Harrison participated in one of our cycles. Phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal. And the reason why I wanted her, because she brings such an authentic voice to her grief experience that I know we will all draw strength and power from. So I definitely want her to be a part of this panel with me tonight. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Monifa.
Hello, everyone. My name is Monifa Harrison. I am a teacher in the Trenton Public School District. I teach at Trenton High School. I'm also a professor at Mercer County College. August 2020, my life changed when I lost my father. And then shortly thereafter, in March of 2021, I lost another rock in my life, which was my grandmother. And I must admit that I knew, or I think I expected to lose my grandmother, but I didn't expect to lose my father. And what happened as a result is I needed support, and I needed to figure out how I was going to make it through. And luckily, Morella reached out to me and said, "How are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm just not doing well." So I joined the Grief Share group, and it was very helpful to me just so that I could begin the process of grieving and understanding what was normal and what I needed to work on, just so that I could just have a sense of normalcy. And it was interesting because one thing that Morella frequently says is that once you go through the process, you will eventually reach the period of experiencing joy in your memory. Honestly, I'm not at that place yet. But at the same time, it has been helpful just in understanding that what I'm feeling is normal. So I'm hoping that this evening we can just kind of have a real conversation about a lot of what folks tell us that we should feel, and then maybe discuss what it actually feels like, and that it's very individual for all of us.
I told you guys she was awesome. So what I would like to do is to start our time off with a video. It's only 3 minutes, and that will put into context a lot of strategies, a lot of things that I want you to start thinking about, particularly as wherever you are in your grief process. And I say grief process because 25 years ago, when I started psychotherapy, we used to use a lot of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's material, where she would talk about the stages of grief. And we realized that when you talk about stages of grief, people think that once you get to one stage, you've finished. And grief is a process, it's a continuum, it's a cycle. So I like to say, wherever you are in that cycle of your grief, be it that it's a new grief, new meaning recent, or you really haven't grieved a loved one that's been transitioned 5, 10, 15 years ago. That's one thing, particularly in our community, we tend not to grieve our loved ones, and we hold on and we try to figure out, well, what's really going on with us? And we realize that we really haven't really sat down to grieve the loss of our loved one. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. The video is really brief, and we'll go from there.
In the first month after he died, I was not functional. I actually don't remember a lot of what happened. I don't remember conversations. I don't remember people that I talked to. I don't remember big chunks of time for about a whole month, all the way through to the memorial service. The second month, I spent a lot of time reading and praying and crying. And it was actually helpful. When I think back on that month, I feel like it was a restorative time, but I also don't remember several conversations and activities that I did. But I know that I couldn't even get out of bed for several hours until I read and heard something in the scripture, or read something that inspired me. Then the third month, I still couldn't get out of bed. until I heard something or wrote something down. It would take an hour or 2 hours every morning just to get myself ready for the day. But I returned to work at the end of the third month, and I wasn't completely awake yet. I was still very confused, but the process of reading and writing in my journal every morning did help me get back to work. I would say the next 2 months, I probably allowed myself to get really busy. I felt like it was starting to develop a new pattern for me, maybe my new normal, but it didn't feel normal, but it definitely felt like I was doing something. I got my dogs back and I started walking them several times a day. I wasn't even a pet person. I didn't know the first thing about taking care of an animal, but I fell in love with our dogs and I'm independently taking care of them. And that's something that happened about 5 months after he died, and I'm very proud of it. About 6 months in, I intentionally planned events during the week and the weekend that would bring me joy. And I looked up concerts and found lectures that I was interested in and went to a flower designing class and went to concerts with my friends. And those things really helped me get excited about the week ahead, or maybe the few days ahead. And I feel like that was around the same time that I started to be able to think clearer and started to be able to make some plans, immediate plans, not long term. I'm still not there yet. One other thing I'm really proud of is that for the first time since he passed away, that I took on a leadership position. I'm now volunteering as the vice chair of the board of a local hospital. And this is something that I didn't know I could do, that I was nervous about, but it's something that has been very fulfilling. And it showed me that I can participate in an activity and give back and get work done, even though I'm still grieving.
So thank you, thank you. So a lot of takeaways from that video, but I want to first start of why do we grieve? And I think sometimes if we start there, we understand. So we grieve because we loved. And I think when you understand it in a context, because you love a person, you miss them, is why we grieve them. And as uniquely as and individually as we love a person, is as uniquely and individually as we're going to grieve them. No two people grieve the same way. And I say that because some people will say, well, oh, you should be over that. You should, when I lost so I did this. Well, that's fine. But I had a special relationship with my loved one. It was unique to us. And the way I grieve them will be unique as well as unique, just as that love was unique that I have for my loved one. So I want to start there as our point of departure, that we grieve because we love. If we didn't love, we wouldn't grieve. And as individual and as special as that love relationship was with your loved one, that is how your grief is going to be as well. So give yourself that space and don't let anyone give you a timeline or a timetable as to how you grieve and when you should be over the loss of your loved one. So I want to start there, particularly depending on where you are in your grief process. Remember, I said it's a process, not a stage. There are no steps. It's important to do what we call DEER, DEER. Make sure you're drinking and staying hydrated. Make sure you eat. We say it, but a lot of times we will forget to eat. And also exercise. And the last one is rest. So we say this a lot in our grief share group, that we remind people, you must DEER, you must drink, you must eat, you must exercise, and you must rest. Even if, depending on where you are in your process, even if you have to write it down, to remind yourself that, yes, that I rest today, that I go for a walk today, that I make sure that I had some water today, because that's going to be very important how you take care of your body when you go through this grief process. Now, this time of year is absolutely one of the most difficult times of the year. It's the holidays. And what do we do with the holidays? we spend time with family. So if you've lost your loved one, it is absolutely going to be different. It's going to be different. And is when you start leaning, I say lean into your grief, because so often we want to be super women. And I hope there are no men. I'm not trying to offend men. Men don't necessarily have the same sort of makeup as we do. We sort of kind of want to put we have to take care of stuff. If we are mothers, if we are caregivers, we have to do a lot of supporting. So we don't necessarily, we can't look like we don't have it together. And a lot of times we do ourselves a disservice because we don't give our time an opportunity to really lean into our grief and experience that grief. So some things I want to talk to you about the holidays. And I'm going to tell you, I'm being very true. I'm being very authentic. I lost my mom August 2nd of this year. So I'm not telling you anything that I'm not experiencing firsthand. I'm not telling you anything that I don't struggle with. Please understand, like Monifa said, we're going to have real candid conversations, particularly about how people of color, particularly African-American women, how we grieve. And, there is something called, I'm going to just deviate. There is something called ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences that is tied to trauma, and grief is a form of trauma. And if we don't necessarily walk through that and sort of understand coping strategies to be resilient, they can be devastating consequences to our person. So absolutely, this is a conversation we're going to be very candid about. One thing, pain is unavoidable. You lost a loved one. When you realize that the pain that you're going to go through when you grieve is unavoidable, go ahead and let it happen. And during our grief share moments, we call it an emotional ambush, that you don't know what's going to trigger you. You don't know where it's going to come from. Something that it could be a smell. It could be a picture. For me, the video, there's a commercial, I think it's an Amazon commercial, where a woman has adopted a little girl, and then she introduces the little girl to her mom. And at the end of the commercial, the little girl calls her mom grandma. I am a mess. I'm a mess. Every time I see that video, I'm like, oh, it's coming. It's going to hit me. It's going to hit me. Because immediately that brings up memories of my mom. But I own it and I lean into it and I accepted that for right now, it's unavoidable because I love my mom and I miss my mom and I acknowledge what it is. I acknowledge that pain. And like Monifa said, you're going to get to that joy. You're going to get to it. Like the woman in the video said, I'm not there yet. And I think when we acknowledge that it's a process and that, it's not something we check off on the list, we give ourselves a time and an opportunity to heal and to really reflect and celebrate the love as we grieve. Don't fake it. Be very candid with people. If people can't handle your truth, then don't tell them. But absolutely don't fake it. Because so many times I have people, oh, I'm fine. I'm like, okay, why are you wearing the same outfit you had on yesterday if you're fine? So a lot of times, trust people with that space that you can tell them, look, I'm not okay. I'm not having a good time. I'm really in a space where I need a moment. Or I just need for you to listen to me. Be candid with people and be sure and just look, tell them what you need. A lot of times as Black women, we don't express our emotional needs to communicate to our loved ones and our friends and our sister friends and our circle of confidants. We need to do that when we're grieving. And second, don't numb your pain. This is something that I see all too often because we don't want to lean into it. We don't want to feel the pain of it. We want to fake it. We numb it. We do self-medication. That self-medication can look like shopping. That self-medication could look like gambling. That self-medication could look like illicit drugs, because I can't say weed anymore because it's legal in New Jersey. But please do not numb your pain, because what happens after you make those, and having, I'm trying to say, those illicit relationships, because what happens is when you come off of that high, when you come home after you've done that shopping, the pain is still there. The pain is still there. So that's why I say, please, get you a sister circle, get your friend, get connected with someone who you can just share this experience with. Now, particularly in the holiday season, this time, and I just want to put a caveat why COVID has made it so interesting for us to grieve our loved ones. Traditionally, in the African American tradition, we have celebrations for our loved ones. In fact, we call it a homegoing. It's a joyous time, and yes, as a preacher, when we do eulogies, you say, look, no crying. They're going on. We have a song. They got brand new shoes, a brand new robe. They're dancing around God's heaven. But because of COVID, we necessarily haven't been able to have those same type of celebrations that give us closure. So a lot of times that homegoing celebration we were able to give closure. Sometimes people have had to be cremated, so we haven't necessarily been able to physically see them and have that point of closure. We usually have family that come around us. Because of COVID restrictions, that hasn't happened. So a lot of ways in which we have traditionally been able to give us that space to grieve, we haven't been able to. So we have to acknowledge that and find what, of course, here's my social work hat coming in, replacement behaviors, so that we can still have that full continuum of what it means to grieve and when we have lost that loved one. So some of it is during the holiday season, listen, know what to expect. Like, I know as soon as I see that first little commercial come on, okay, I got to get the tissue. And this is being very aware of how you feel, what a trigger may be. If you particularly did something particular with the loved one, what that may do. When you know it, you can't prepare for it. Listen, you can't always prepare for how that emotion is going to hit you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It could hit you out the blue because something could trigger you that you never knew was there before. So, but if you're ready for it, you can sort of figure out what that looks like. Because sometimes when we have what we call flashbacks, when, say, for instance, particularly if your loved one drove a white car, you're outside and you see that white car come by you, you may just freeze. And we tell people, first of all, take a deep breath. Look around you. Count to 10. And that way you already have a strategy, because remember we talked about giving you strategies for when you have that emotional ambush that you didn't even know was coming. So that is something, particularly holidays, for instance, if your loved one, I'll probably refer to my mom a lot because that's the one I most recently lost, but my mom made a wonderful ham. So every time I pass the grocery store, I see a ham, I'm thinking about my mom. Initially, I couldn't even make a ham for Thanksgiving because that was my mom's job. My mom made the ham. But I am happy to say on Christmas, I'm going to try to make that ham because that's a process. So I acknowledged sort of what was sort of kind of keeping me there. I leaned into it and I'm making a plan to say, you know what? I may cry the whole time, but I'm making that step toward making the ham. So another thing, create new traditions, particularly around, I want to really stress the holiday season. If you would go buy the Christmas tree with your loved one, do something different, buy a wreath. Make a new tradition so that you can celebrate that new tradition and still honor that loved one. So think through that, what that may look like and how you want to celebrate the new tradition of that loved one. For instance, we just had our last grief share this past week, and someone said, well, why don't you make a wreath? My mom was a librarian. They said, why don't you make a wreath? I said, well, you know what? Every Christmas Eve, she would read "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." So me and my children are going to make a "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" wreath. So I never made a wreath before, but it's a new tradition that we're honoring my mom and we're creating something new in her memory so we can grieve her together. Take it slow. Take it slow. There is no competition. There is no medal for how you grieve. Please take your time in the process. And I would encourage, that sister circle, those friends, someone you can talk to. And if you get to a point where you're stuck, and people do get stuck, reach out for professional help. Reach out for professional help, and it's okay. Counseling is not a bad word in the Black community. Let me give you permission. Counseling is not a bad word in the Black community. If you feel you are stuck and you have suicidal ideations and you feel like you just can't go on, seek help. It's okay. You lost a loved one. It's okay. And they would want you to get the necessary help so that you can heal. And the one thing, particularly holidays, not so much during COVID, but pre-COVID, we had a lot of holiday parties and some people dread going to them. Listen, don't commit. Just say, you know what? Thank you for the invitation. If I'm able to, I will attend. Do not feel pressure. If you're not ready, do not feel pressure to go. And have a script. This is another suggestion that we give in Grief Share. Have a script. Already have it in your head. If someone asks you a question, how you're going to respond. And it's okay to protect your grieving process and say, you know what? I'm not ready to talk about it. That's owning your grief process. And if someone can't respect the fact that you're owning your grief process, it's okay. Remember, grief is individual, and you have to do this. Another thing, it takes time to heal, because how you love that person is how you love that person. And just like someone's not going to tell you to get over that person, so we're not going to tell you, but we're going to say, give yourself the time and the space to heal. And one way to heal is to help others. Just like in the video, she said she didn't think that she would be the vice chair of a board at a hospital, but now she understands by helping others is helping her in her healing. So please reach out, help others. Another thing I want to put out is she talked about journaling. I have to say, I am an ordained minister. And I cannot say spending time with God, if you don't believe in God, a higher power, but wherever you draw your strength from, it is imperative, particularly in this process of grief, that you have a source where you can go to. If it's a daily devotional, if you get up, I love the Holy Bible, if it's a reading plan, whatever you need to draw your strength, because that is another way of how you're going to get through this grieving process, is that you have someone to tap into, a belief, a hope that can get you through. And that is your relationship with, I will say, God. If it's not God, if it's Buddha, if it's not Buddha, if it's not Allah, if it's not Allah, it's however. And the last thing I wanted to turn before I turn it over to Monifa is to be thankful. Be absolutely thankful. The love you had with your loved one is something special. And be thankful that you had the opportunity to love that loved one the way you did. And do not be shy about it. Do not be apologetic about it. Lean into it, because that will also be a source in your grief process to go toward your healing. So I'm going to turn over to Monifa now. And I know you may have lots of questions, so I'll be ready for them, but I want you to hear from Monifa. Take it away, Monifa.
So Marilla took all everything I was going to say, but but it's okay. Just a couple of things I want to piggyback on some of the things that she brought up. One of them, or one of the strategies that I personally used, is journaling, because many times there were things that I don't want to say out loud to other people that might not be nice. That I can write to myself or write them down without necessarily knowing that it's going to hurt the other person. Because, as all families, we all have issues in our family. So maybe there's something that I might have had, like a disagreement with my sister or my stepmother, or I didn't agree the way that something was done. Sometimes I can write things down, let it sit, let it marinate for a couple of days, and then come back and look at it and wonder, and then I can reevaluate whether or not it's something that really needs to be addressed, or if it's something that I can let go. One thing in our community, one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of times being sad or crying, it's frowned upon. People will say, stop crying, or, okay, that's the last time you're going to cry, and things like that. However, anger is accepted. It's okay for someone to get angry, or someone to be nasty in the grocery store line, or to be inconsiderate, right? So in identifying and understanding that this time of year is tough for me, if I go into a situation where I know I might be a little short with someone, because I pre-identified it, I can take a deep breath before I respond sometimes. A lot of times I take a very long breath, and then I can actually kind of think about what I'm going to say before I actually say it. The other piece that I believe that has come out of this for me, especially living in this community, is empathy, because I know what I've felt and what I've been feeling. A lot of times, if someone else is upset about something that they shouldn't necessarily be upset about, when someone snaps over something that really shouldn't be a big deal, once you probe a little bit further, you can kind of figure out that maybe they're dealing with something else, and what they're upset about or what they said to you was not necessarily about you, or maybe it was about something else that someone is dealing with. So as I grant empathy to folks who say things that might not be polite, I can also understand that while I may not be forthcoming with what I'm dealing with, other folks probably aren't being forthcoming with what they're dealing with. So sometimes it's about just offering some grace to someone else, and hoping that when I need it, I will get it in exchange. At the beginning, Marella talked about making sure that we drink and eat and exercise and rest. And one strategy that I used at the very beginning was I would start walking. The gyms were closed. And actually, I'm proud to say that I have actually continued this process. But I walk about 4 miles on the weekends, especially now that I'm back at work. So on Saturday and Sunday, I walk from my house on Greenwood Avenue all the way up to, I think it's Johnston, where the cemetery is, ironically. And then I come back down Greenwood. So I go over to Hamilton, up Hamilton to Johnston, and then back down. It's about 4 miles. At the very beginning, I would cry all the way up Hamilton, and then I was able to pull it back together when I came back down Greenwood. But because I was walking and because I was moving, I was able to actually just be one with myself and get my thoughts in order, and to process, and also just get exercise, so that by the time I got back home, I was clear and my thoughts were aligned with how I wanted to position myself for the rest of the day. And the other strategy that I developed is just meditating. There are several different meditation videos on YouTube, and I know Peloton has a great one, and it's just focusing on just different parts of your body, just and just feeling the muscles just tense up and relaxing them, tensing up and relaxing them. And after you do that a number of times, sometimes you can let the tension in your body just breathe out and let it go away. Because I think as African Americans, we frequently hold on to the stress, and the stress ends up presenting itself as problems like hypertension and diabetes and things of that nature. And sometimes just clearing our minds will help us to A, identify what the issues are that are bothering us, and then B, it kind of helps us to address them if we can. Or just I'd say, hey, okay, it's still grief, or this isn't actually what I thought it was. And then the last thing that I was going to say is that sometimes people who care about you say things that when you're in a state of grieving, they don't sit well. Like God needed him to come home and be with him, or he's gone on to a better place. And I know that frequently it's a person's intent to make you feel better. But and knowing that that's what folks are going to say, sometimes you have to have a prepared response for that and just say thank you and keep it moving. Whereas when you're in the heat of grief or in the moment of grief, when someone says that they have gone on to a better place, many times that may not sit well. And I have taken it upon myself to, instead of just saying on Facebook, I'm sorry for your loss, I try to pick up the phone and say, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do for you? Can I help you with anything? To my friends, because just I'm sorry for your loss sometimes, and being on the other end of that, sometimes, and I hope folks don't take this the wrong way, because I know everyone's intent is there to say that you're sorry. However, on the other end of that, and this is going to come out really crass, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm going to say it anyway. You being sorry doesn't make me feel better. So sometimes I just had to step away from that, and I decided to change my intent. So when I see that someone else is going through something, I pick up the phone and take the time and reach out and ask if there's something that I can do. And then I ask later, after they've been through the funeral and things of that nature. Because many times up until the funeral, there are a lot of people around. And then it's a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, when you're still dealing with it, that folks think you should be normal again. And many of us haven't quite got to that place yet. So I would ask that you all be more intentional. And I'm not saying this, directing this to anyone specifically, but I would ask that we all, let me put myself in that, be more intentional about understanding folks as they're dealing with issues, so that it's not just a passing, I'm sorry for your loss. And then finally, my last piece, I promise this will be my last piece, establish boundaries. And that might mean that you say no to helping to do something. If you're dealing with, or as we're grieving, sometimes you can't take someone someplace or do certain things because you're trying to figure out how to get yourself together. And I think we have carried so many other people for so long. There needs to come a time when we take care of ourselves. And sometimes for me, it feels really selfish because I'm used to giving so much. However, I realized that just over the last year, I had to kind of take a step back and make sure that I'm okay. Just like when you're on the airplane and they say that if you have a child with you, make sure that you have the oxygen upon yourself first before you give it to the child, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else. Okay, so with that, Morella, I'm gonna be done. And if anyone has any questions, I am open for them.
So I'm gonna go ahead. I did get a question. I did get a question. How essentially it would say, how do you sort of help someone without being intrusive in their space? And that's a tricky one. And because you don't know. And this is what I talk about when you are sort of understanding your process to communicate. I think, Monique, you talked about it, having those boundaries. But the one thing I'm going to say, pray for that person, because the one thing that you can do is to make sure you are interceding on their behalf, because you have no idea what they are going through. And then slowly ask. I said, Monique is awesome. Ask, like, how are you doing? What do you need? I think a lot of times we say we don't want it, we don't want to bother, but they'll let you know. They'll let you know, and don't get offended. Please don't get offended if they brush you off, if they don't take your call initially, because there's something that they have to lean into. But you be consistent and you be persistent, because if you truly love that person and you want to be a support for that person not answering your phone call should not bother you. That person not returning your phone call, that person sort of, not responding immediately should not bother you, because like we said, you've given that person grace, and they will come around. They will, because you know why? You were consistent. You were consistent in your love. You were persistent in your love, and they know that. So you keep doing what you're doing. Um, Keep them in prayer. We're going to always start there. But, send them a text every day. I still get a text every day from my aunt. Every day I still get one. And I love her for it. We don't talk, but every morning about 6:30, bing, she gives him that text. And I'm so grateful for it. And now I sort of kind of want it. Like when she's late, I'm like, where my text? And that is that. So also in the church, we talk about a ministry of presence. Whereas you're not necessarily saying anything, but because you show up, you're ministering to the person. So just you saying hello, I don't need anything, just checking on you. That's also a form of a ministry of presence. So that's one way you can support a person. I don't want to go too deep in the weeds, because I just want to keep it very, very, generic. But if there are other concerns, just reach out to me.
Thank you so much. I can't say enough about how this topic, as difficult as it may be, is exactly what the Health and Wellness Committee is striving to attain for every woman that we can reach out to. Mental health, a better self, taking care of yourself, all of the things that Monifa, I just thank you so much for sharing your personal story with us. Morella, of course, we know what you do as a chapter. We know what your ministry is. And we thank you for both of you for approaching this topic with such grace. At this time, I would like to turn it over to my co-chair, Bianca Taylor Davis, who will entertain any questions that you may have and provide any comments that may be necessary at this time. Bianca?
Hi, good evening, everyone. If you have any questions at this time, I invite you to enter them into the chat. They can be directed at either Dr. Holmes or Ms. Harrison, or to both, or if it's a general comment that you think should be shared amongst the entire group here, we are welcoming you to do so at this time. Let's see. Comments here. I don't see any here yet, but I know they're coming, so I'll ask my question first. I know we're speaking of taking off the cape for the woman, but in our own grief, some of us have children who have experienced that same grief, and them trying to unpack that backpack. How do we deal with our grief, but still try to make sure that that child, whether it be a younger child or a teenager, how do they unpack that grief? How do they manage that in their everyday being?
I'll try to start, because as I say, my benefit job is that I'm a child study team social worker for Trim Public Schools. So I see a lot of that. I see a lot of that manifest in a lot of different ways, particularly behavior. And, so when I come in as a social worker, my first question, I'm doing some, I'm doing a lot of, diagnosing, like, okay, what's going on? I'm asking questions, and 9 times out of 10, it's a loss. They're grieving a loss. And we just don't necessarily know how to address that, because after I talk to the child, I turn to talk to the mom is grieving a loss as well. So you have a child who is experiencing the same thing. So the first thing is to have those conversations. And one thing that I encourage, particularly, I would say, kids are a little more advanced. So I used to say 12, but now I've taken it down to 8. That you can have that conversation. The reason being that our kids have really become desensitized to death. Whereas before, we were like, well, usually we wait about 12 to have that conversation, but include them and sort of let them sort of talk to you about how they're feeling. I think a lot of times we don't give kids a space to talk about how they're feeling, and we hear them. And that's where you sit down and say, well, how do you feel now that Big Mama's gone? And, when I talk about creating new traditions, particularly around the holidays, but that's anything new, the sort of, one of the terms is that, replacement behavior, because what you want to do, you still want to keep and cherish that memory, but sort of how do you do it differently to honor the love that you had? And a lot of times, because as adults, we don't want to talk about it. So how can we talk about it with our kids when we can't talk about it ourselves? So some of it is that we have those conversations starting about 8. Before it used to be 12, but now look, these some pretty savvy little 8-year-olds. And I'm almost torn with 6. The only reason why, because some cognition still hasn't happened at 6, that I think an 8-year-old can take some of those abstract concepts when we talk about what it means. Particularly when you have a spiritual foundation, because I am Christian. So yeah, but you have to be willing to talk about having those conversations with yourself first. Because if you're not true and you're not authentic and you're not real in how you're experiencing this grief, you can't be present for your little one. And then you can be together and you can grow together and you can celebrate the love you had together and you can do those new traditions together and you can make those new memories together. But you must definitely sort of know where you are. And like I always say, lean into your grief, lean into it. It's not going nowhere, y'all. Don't think it's going to disappear. Surprise, surprise. It's going to be there. And if you don't deal with it, it gets bigger. And it I talked about ACEs, it becomes problematic and it hurts you. You can't tell me that grief is not associated with the fact that we disproportionately have fibroids. And we all women, right? Okay. That Black women disproportionately have fibroids. Why do we have fibroids in the center where we give life? We disproportionately have high blood pressure. We disproportionately have all these medical issues. And when you get down, when I come in, I do a social interview, I sit down and talk about all the loss that this family has experienced that no one has talked about. We need to start having conversations, and that's a way too long answer for your question. But you see, when I said I was passionate about this, I am passionate about it. Sorry about that.
I just wanted to chime in. I have 2 boys, and what I did, because I was going through the Grief Share program, so I was just very forthcoming with them, and I just let them know I'm experiencing grief over the loss of my dad, and I wanted to make sure that they understood that it was okay. The other piece that I made sure of is I did talk to people at their schools to let them know that this is what has happened in our family, and that if anything presented itself, to let us know, and that should they need to speak to anybody, that's okay. So that was helpful for us, because I think it is important for us to be forthcoming to those people that interact with our kids, to let them know that this is what's going on, and if you see anything, please let me know, and then refer them if necessary.
Great, thank you. I have another question from the chat. How do you let go of material things of your loved one? It has taken me 5 years and one personal organizer counselor to begin the process.
Yeah, that's a hard one. That's a hard one because I can't give you a timetable for your grief. But I will commend that you made the step. I will commend that you are now taking the process. It's hard. My father has been dead for 14 years and he still has clothes in his closet in Atlanta. My mom can't quite get rid of a couple of his suits. And we're okay with it. Now, I don't know, but I think you're very healthy in taking the step. And it may be, in Grief Share, there's a video that talks about just do a little bit at a time, but do it on your time when you're ready to have that, to go through that process. Because what happens is someone may say, oh, you should have that closet already cleaned out. Really? Thank you. This is where you have your pre-scripted response. Thank you for caring. And just smile and move on. But I will commend the fact that you sort of kind of know and you're taking steps. But it's in your time. It's in your time. Another question I have, sort of, what can Black community leaders do to develop trust between community members and health professionals? The best way, what my kids have always taught me, when I say my kids in the school district, be your authentic self. No one's going to believe you if you're not real. And I think you have to walk the walk, talk the talk, and they see it. And that gives you legitimacy, that gives you authenticity, because they understand. I think so often they need to see us in our community. I tell people, I'm going to shop where you shop. I'm going to buy stuff where you buy stuff. So when I roll up on you, don't act like you know who I am. So and know that, I've rolled up on my kids at the shop right on Olden Avenue. Like, oh, you for real? Yeah, I'm for real. I told you I live where you live. I shop where you shop. And what that does, that gives me more legitimacy. So when I talk about mental health issues, they know I'm for real. They know I'm not just a person that's coming in because I may have some alternative motive, or I feel like I want to be their savior. They see me as part of the community. They see what I've done. They see that what I say is what I do. And that's how it is. I think a lot of our leaders, for whatever reason, sort of are afraid to be vulnerable, to let them know that, yeah, I hurt too. I'm grieving too. This hurts me too. But I think when people know that you share in that pain, it just gives you so much more credibility. It just gives you, but I could go on about that too. So that's another conversation offline. Whoever put that chat, hit me up offline and we can talk more about that. So I'm passionate about that too. Because I just believe you got to be real. One thing my kids they tell me, first of all, they know when you're not real. And when you're not real, they don't respect you. And one way for people to believe what you say is that they have to respect you and they have to know you're real. Basic 101. Thank you to my 6th graders at Kilmer. Yeah, I did shout you out. Any other questions?
I do not see any in the chat at this time. If anyone does have any questions, I invite you to enter them into the chat now, because we have about 5 minutes or so before we are scheduled to wrap up here. So if anybody has any questions, the floor is yours, or the keyboard is yours right now, so that we can get some more in-depth insight from Morella and Monifa with their experience and their expertise in this area. So anyone? Let's see.
So if there's not a question, I just really want to encourage us to not think that counseling is a bad word. Not think that a support group is a bad place to be. I want us to get over wherever that came from. I don't know where that came from yet. But we just need to sort of lean into that. It's okay to get help. It's okay to talk to someone. It's okay to own it. Because if you don't own it, you can't get through it. And like I tell people, in the church say, speak into existence. Speak it so you can acknowledge it, and once you acknowledge it, then we can put a plan in place to address it. And we have to get past this fear, this phobia, or this faux pas that, you know, I don't need counseling, I don't need a therapist. And also I want to stress the whole self-medicating, the fact that we try to numb our pain, whatever that numbing pain looks like. You know, it may not be alcohol, it may not be drugs, it may be shopping. You know, Amazon was everybody's friend, you know, during COVID. You know, I just want to make sure, you know, that we weren't trying to hide our grief or mask our grief. You know, I'm saying that jokingly, but just be mindful, and it's okay. It is so okay. And when you get to a place, and you will get joy, like I tell Monifa all the time, joy is coming. Just hang in there. It's coming. It's coming. Joy is coming. But when you get there, and I cannot underscore enough the importance of helping others in your healing. You know, there's something to talk about, you know, we talk about being our sister's keeper, our brother's keepers, doing unto others as we have them do unto you. This is our healing too. And so often, I can tell you 100% of the time that people heal faster when they help others. So, you know, I think that I want to end there. I think, do we have enough time? Another question. I didn't see anything in the chat. So I definitely want to end there. And I'll give Monifa, because she's so awesome, y'all. Is she awesome? I'll give Monifa the last word.
I really think that Morella handled everything, but I do believe that one of the pieces that as a community we need to just embrace is that it's okay to ask for help when you need it. We are not super women, and that might mean that you have to find a group of people that you can go and talk to, or a therapist, just so that you can make sure that everything is as it should be. And in our community, I think a lot of times we say that, what's wrong with me because I can't do everything. And there's nothing wrong, but we might just need to be realigned just so that we can make sure that everything is good. So that's all I have for today. And thank you so much for having me. And Morella, when somebody said, Morella said that you would come on with her, I was like, well, if Morella said it, I'll go. You know, I'll go.
Thank you. Thank you, Morella, Monifa. This is, again, a topic that this will probably not be the only time that we touch on this topic with health and wellness. I'm hoping it's not the last time, because it's definitely something that is a continuing conversation, and we need to not be afraid to have that conversation here in the face. So again, thank you to the both of you this evening. We would like to thank our participants who have signed on with us to hear these wonderful words and encouragement. At this time, we would like to turn it over to our SORA President, Georgette Bowman, for some closing remarks as we close out this evening, and we'll be letting everyone go for the evening. Again, thank you, ladies.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our Health and Wellness Committee for putting on an awesome program, and thank our speakers for a very enlightening conversation concerning grief. And I'm sure we'll have it again. It truly is needed, especially during this time. I definitely want to say a special thank you to SORA Morella Holmes, who is our vice president, and definitely in understanding that what she is going through, and quite a few of our sorors who are going through loss at this time, especially during the holidays. You know, we're here for you. I have to be mindful now of what I say and how I approach people who have experienced loss, because sometimes you think what you're saying is helpful, and now to hear that it might not be. So it makes me, be mindful of how I speak to you all regarding grief. So thank you again for coming on this evening and taking the time to learn, and for our participants to learn, and for those who presented the valuable information that you shared with us. Thank you again, and everyone have a good evening.